This is the Real Footy podcast. Coming up, Gather Round is hailed a huge success, but will it return to South Australia next year? Essendon beat Melbourne to end their losing streak. The Swans and Hawks are in formidable form, and the Bulldogs lose for the first time this season.
Quickly on Saligo, they're building. Walker sees Neil Bullen, runs to 50. This should end pretty well. It's in good hands. It's a quick finish, and Crows get the first. Gather Round is underway.
Good at the clearances today. Merritt is the most dangerous. Left foot snap from the pocket. Zach Merritt. Ridiculous.
Peru got it on to Filippo. He'll launch from 55. It's a vacant goal square. It's online. It's a goal. They've got two in a row.
Hello and welcome. My name is Peter Ryan, and joining me today are Caroline Wilson and Libby Birch. Great to have you on board.
Great to be here.
Yeah, so good to see you both again.
And Caro, you're fresh off the plane from Adelaide, where you enjoyed Gather Round. Can you give us a take on your thoughts of this year's version?
The overall take is that it's just a brilliant event. I think they're not fudging crowds when they say that they've even exceeded last year's numbers. It was extraordinary, the numbers on the hill last night, on Sunday night for the Port Adelaide St Kilda game. Just
Given
extraordinary. Yeah, look, the downside this year with Gather Round was the weather. And look, to be honest, there weren't any unbelievable games. I don't think the fixturing was brilliant. I mean, I think Brisbane are playing down the fact they say they're happy to go to the Barossa, but they are the most exciting team in footy to watch at the moment. And it seems odd they didn't get an Adelaide Oval game. They seem to favour the Victorian teams.
Reasonably, in some respects.
Yeah, I get. Well, a lot of Victorians go over, although, a lot of West Australians were there this year.
Absolutely.
And Freo, although it wasn't the most exciting game of all time, they had a scrappy Doer win over Collingwood, which was great for their supporters. They were the only non-Victorian team, apart from the Adelaide teams, to play at Adelaide Oval. The off-field fascination for me was watching Peter Malinauskas. He's got the power now.
He's a smooth operator too, isn't he?
Well, we say that every year, but there was an edge to that smoothness this year because he's in a powerful position and he knows that the AFL have had a tough start to the year with fixturing.
Yep.
And Easter Monday sort of turned the corner for them, but only just very, very recently in terms of crowds, etc. So he knows how much people love Gather Round. He knows how important it is to the footy calendar. He knows he's got the AFL over a barrel. They are tough negotiators. So all week there was some little digs here and there. I mean, even the suggestion, I was at the Swan's breakfast on Friday morning where he said, if you fixture a Northern round with 9 games, all involving
opening
every
round
team.
in Northern states.
An opening round, and even though it would be spread over 2 states and many, many venues and many cities, he said, we're off the table.
Yeah. Do you think he's genuine?
I do.
Yeah.
And I think he's right in saying it would diminish Gather Round. I have absolutely no doubt a deal will be announced in the coming weeks. I have absolutely no doubt it's coming back to South Australia and will be at least for the next 3 years. And I think it's a great move by the AFL. So, look, you can't. I know we say it every year, but you've been there, Pete. You wander around, and on every street corner, you see football fans talking to their favourite coach or their favourite player.
Magnificent.
It's
atmosphere.
very cool.
You see footy. You're sitting over coffee, and you realise the four kids sitting next to you, looking at their phones, watching the Masters, are actually Darcy Parish and a group of Essendon players.
That's right. It is incredible in that respect.
What do you think about keeping it in Adelaide till Tassie comes in? Do you think Gather Round could go to Tassie after?
Not until the stadium's built.
Okay.
So as Malinauskas, in strongly supporting Tassie, as he did at another function this week, he was pretty loose too. He's cracking Donald Trump gags and swearing, and but
he's an old
as he
Port
said,
Adelaide supporter.
It couldn't.
His spring comes out in him.
It couldn't have happened without Adelaide Oval, and Gather Round in Tasmania might be one way they kickstart the Tasmanian footy season when the new stadium is built, but that's not at least until 2031. Yeah, okay. So
I've got to say, this is the first time I haven't gone, and it is a fantastic event, and maybe it was FOMO, but there is so much sort of how good's this going on from people who are over there
Yep.
broadcasting, and it does get a little bit, I don't know what the word is, galling. Something
I
about
don't
that.
mind it from, I mean, you heard it a lot from Hamish McLaughlin,
Yeah.
who's a South Australian, and you can see the pride of a South Australian person and
Yeah.
why they love it. But I agree with you, and I also read with interest the Sean Gorman column that I think The Age ran late
Yep.
last week, where he spoke about bread and circuses, and it might be gather round, but how many people are left out? I mean, Libby, I've been saying this since year one. Why is AFLW not included in some way?
Yeah, I think Ed Marinoff mentioned it as well over the weekend, and I think there has to be a way of bringing in AFLW, whether it is that Irish versus Australia game over in whilst gather round
That'd
is
be fun.
happening. That could be fun. An exhibition game where you're showcasing AFLW's best talent. I have heard that there could be a gather round of AFLW sorts in Sydney as early as next year. And I think that could be really interesting to trial for AFLW as well. But I think the more exposure we get, the better. So there definitely should be some sort of AFLW piece at Gather Round next year.
And forget Australia versus Ireland. I love that idea, but South Australia should be involved.
Yeah.
They've got some great...
Yeah, or you do like an SA versus Victoria
Exactly.
type match, which
Yeah.
I think would be great. And you could showcase the best talent from Victoria. And as you said, SA, be perfect to get the Adelaide supporters going. And I think that would be a great... You showcase it on Channel 7 and give it a red-hot crack.
Adelaide's just perfectly set up because you just wander down at Adelaide Oval from the city. You go to bars and restaurants and coffee shops, and you can walk to Norwood Oval if you want to. That's a great atmosphere down there, and a bit of back to, old-fashioned footy.
It could never
supporting.
happen at the Gold Coast. I mean,
no.
the Gold Coast home ground is in the middle of nowhere
It's in the
apart
middle
from an
of a paddock.
RACV resort.
Yeah, I know. When I stayed in that resort that Richmond stayed in, it's fine.
The only issue that would be of, I guess, a limiting factor as to why W can't be played in Gather Round, which we could get around, is that we actually haven't started official training yet. And that's probably the problem, in that we start official training in the 11th of May, and we'd have to come out of this period and be ready to play right now, which I'm sure the AFLW players would love to do and would do.
I think they
But
would absolutely
yeah, we
do
would
it.
do that, but it would have to be a bit more restructuring in terms of having players ready to play right now.
Yeah.
And there's a mob breakfast, which is mainly for First Nations players, but a lot of the AFL fraternity and sorority turns up on the Saturday morning in Adelaide.
Sorority.
Well, there are women there as well as men.
Great.
Didn't you do Latin at school,
No,
Pete?
I didn't.
And there's also and obviously the Sudanese, and there's many different cultures represented at this mob breakfast. But again, could there be some form of Indigenous game,
Yep.
Aboriginal game? I just feel that there are other things that could be done. And Peter Malinauskas never stops coming up with ideas. So good on him. But yeah, an edge to his behaviour, I reckon, this year, in terms of he's the one with the power, even though he was as charming as ever.
Yeah,
He
and
even,
he should be.
he even cracked a Lockie Neal gag at one lunch.
That's brave.
And asked
That
whether
is-
it was too
that
soon.
is brave.
I think that is too soon. I mean, isn't there reports of something like the AFL gets 40 million and they've economic income of 110 million or something going into the state? I'm not sure about that, but it's a huge amount of economic activity going into what I termed blather round on Sunday, because I was sick of so many people saying how good it was, and I was feeling a bit sorry for myself sitting
Yes,
at home.
I do try, because I've been lucky enough to go every year, to try and remind myself that what's it looking like outside. But talking
No,
to
it's so
friends
much
who
fun.
just watched the TV, they said it was great, except that really the best game, which actually ended up being the most controversial game, which we'll probably talk about in a moment, was the Port Adelaide St Kilda game. And as in the best, and some amazing individual performances, but no real great games to speak of.
Do you want to get on to the footy? And we may as well start with last night's game, even though it's a bit down on the running sheet. But that was fresh in our memory. St Kilda were under enormous pressure, Libby, and Jack Silvani, who's probably been a really difficult start to his career at St Kilda, stood up and got them home. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, I really liked, one thing I am liking in the AFL at the moment with what teams can do is quell momentum. I think it's really challenging with the new rules to be able to, once a team gets a run on, how do you stop that? Because we know that centre bounce is pretty crucial at the moment. And I felt like the Saints could do that. They did it twice last night against Port when they surged, particularly in the conditions. It's very much a territory game. The ball skids on. But I thought they did that really well. And, of course, you need players like Silvani to step up in those moments. And, God, he had the nose bleeding and it was just a moment. And I think I really liking the way that the Saints have shaped up. I know they haven't had the best start to the year, but I've got a theory that the way that Ross has planned his team, they're going to be in great form by the end of the year. And why I say that is because he's got some great rucks in Marshall and De Koning, and then, of course, a strong half-back line with Nasiah, Hill, Sinclair. I think that's the key to this game at the moment. And when I look at all the rucks in the competition and which teams are performing well, it's the teams that have got really agile, athletic rucks, with a balance of maybe someone that can do the around-the-ground physicality that are doing really well. Teams like Hawks, Freo, Sydney, they're all flying at the moment.
No, it's a good point. I thought De Koning was underwhelming last night and he's still struggling.
He talked after the game about how he's, happy with this and his skills. And a friend of mine texted me and said, how many drop marks?
I know, chest marks.
Yes, but I feel like it takes a year, I would say a year, for a player to be fully woven into the fabric of a team. And I guess Houston is a really good example of that at Collingwood, playing better this year.
Don't start me on Houston, but yes, you're right. Port, interestingly, given that they chased Wanganeen-Malira so hard last year, were really into him last night. What did you make of that battle?
Well, it was sort of funny because you had Horn Francis and Chase Burgoyne before the game, and Naz just laughing and chatting, and then at the end of the game laughing and chatting, and during the game it was just brutal.
It was like brothers, weren't they?
It was exactly like that. Yeah. And then he was. I love Wanganeen-Malira when he's not trying to be everything and everyone and not getting 30 possessions, but just those cameo performances. So they were just absolutely brilliant.
He was very lucky to get a free kick that gave him a goal, but he played well, and it was interesting. Butters and him were the two highest possession winners on the game and clearly the most influential players. But you're right, Cara, a few other players came along with him to help him.
It was a much better team performance. Yeah. What about the end of the game when Zach Butters gave that interview with Channel 7 and said he was reported for abusive language, a 50-metre penalty that could not have come at a worse time? It was the Jack Silvani.
No, it was Mitch Owens. Him and Ollie Wines were standing next to the umpire, and they asked Zach Butters says that he asked merely, what was that for? And not only gave away a 50-metre penalty for that, but it was also reported for abusive language. And I've spoken to Port Adelaide this morning. They're adamant privately.
Adamant, me too. Adamant he didn't swear, didn't call him the C as in the cheat word, nothing.
Nothing.
And this is the most heavily fined player in the AFL. And he's not going to cop another fine.
Nor should he, if that's what he said.
Well, it's just so interesting. Do you? And then if a captain goes up to an umpire acting captain at the end of the game and asks what he was reported for or what was said, and the umpire won't speak to him, I guess the umpire maybe wants to diffuse it. Yeah,
that, and also if you've put someone on report, you probably don't want to go down the path of having a discussion around the report before it actually gets heard.
So he probably did the right thing there, but. This is a guy who was probably best on ground. Does he not get the votes?
Yeah.
A 50-metre penalty that happened at the crucial time. If it was a mishearing, and we've had a bit of alleged mishearing in the last week or two.
Well, the umpires obviously have that audio device on them, so whatever has been said will be on that audio device.
You'd hope so. I mean, I think that's just a personal view. It's an overreaction from the umpire to give a 50 in such a critical game, even if the players,
I don't think if there was it doesn't sound like there was something said, but if there was something said, I think a 50 is warranted. But it sounds like it clearly there was nothing said.
Well, it depends whether it's warranted or whether you just say cut it out and do a bit of Ray Chamberlain sort of behaviour where you give it back to them.
Yeah, there've been some funny decisions this year, but it did make me think of Lance Collard, only in that Lance Collard has signed a stat deck to say he didn't use the F word, that he said maggot. Now, two players one of them a former teammate of Lance Collard,
Darby Hipwell.
adamant that he did say it, and a decision to time code this conversation. We're talking on a Monday, and we think there's a decision coming down tomorrow. St Kilda may or may not appeal.
Yep.
So many issues there, but
I feel very uncomfortable about that whole thing at this point, but we'll see what happens.
why?
Well, I sat through the hearing. It's an incredibly difficult decision to reach, and I understand that. It just feels like somehow we've gone down the wrong path here in trying to stamp out what we obviously all want to stamp out.
So was it the CEO of the Pride Cup who said this is not the way to stamp out homophobia?
She said that there should be consequences, as in sanctions, but alone they don't do the job, was what she said. And the other thing that was really interesting that she said was that when a player is suspended, and that's the mere way of trying to deal with this issue, the pushback falls on the LGBTQI community, who actually are the ones that get abused by supporters and on social media for ridiculously standing up
for themselves,
ridiculously on the supporters' behalf, for actually making the point that this sort of language is out of hand or out of line. So she was saying that without all those education process to the whole football community, it actually has a really devastating effect on their community.
Well, we do digress, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear your views on that, because I sort of feel the same way. And look, someone's lying, but in the end,
Well, I heard Ken Hinkley, sorry to interrupt, say on your program that you have to be careful about Lance Collard because he's now been called a liar and a homophobe publicly. And I'm not saying that if you said the wrong thing, well, diddums, but there is a care there.
Yeah, I think there is too. But and just so to get back to circle back to gather round in that Port Adelaide St Kilda game, I just want one more comment about St Kilda from you, Libby. So I think they're building, but I still think they'll be lucky to make wildcard round this year.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
You reckon they'll finish?
I reckon
they'll come. I reckon they'll come good. I think
they'll be in the top 10.
Well, I also had a look at. They've got two players come back in King and Henry, and I think that makes a little bit of a difference. If they that takes them probably 3 or 4 weeks to get going again once they're in the side. But I do believe he's got the bones of a great team there, and the cohesiveness needs to start being more consistent, yes. And if it doesn't, then they'll fall out. But I think that they might be coming good.
I reckon bones of a good team, not a great team.
Port Adelaide, they don't use the word rebuild, but they are now saying that they are refreshing or transitioning. I think it was a word the coach used.
They're very angry about the whole draft rules, but that's another topic.
Yeah, they are. And it does seem such bad luck that they finally get a brilliant father-son, and that they say they might not get him. The AFL say it
He's
will
an
work
NGA.
out.
Well, Louis Salopek's a father-son. Dougie Cochrane's a NGA.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, whose father did play for them. Just to circle back on a couple of other games, Adelaide Carlton. Carlton was same old story. What do you make of them?
I actually thought the Blues were a bit better.
It was hardly the same old story. I mean,
they fell apart in the second half.
But the reason why I felt like they were a bit better is because they weren't expected to win.
Yep.
And, we were in the exact same chair last year, round 1, when we spoke about how the Blues lost that game to Richmond in the second half. And that was sort of the start of their demise, really, in terms of being able to play 4 quarters, and that was last year in round 1. I feel like they're still scarred from that game, but I thought they were better. And George Hewitt was a massive call to leave him out.
Yep.
And I thought it was a good call because Voss sort of tried to start injecting speed into the midfield. Chera, Williams, Smith, they sprinkled that in, and I thought it actually looked a little bit quicker. I thought Williams was actually probably one of the better ones in that midfield chain.
Yep.
But surprisingly, the Blues actually had more inside 50 entries.
I know.
Like, they are getting enough of the ball. They're going at 40% inside 50, but they're just not very cohesive.
No, poor old
at all.
Harry Mackay was getting his hands to the ball a lot and dropping a lot of marks. Oh no, it was wet.
No, that was
Wasn't ideal.
Terrible performance. What was your view about Cripps spending all that time on the bench at a crucial time?
It was unfortunate that decision was made, because I think that's the time when you do put the hammer down and think, well, we've got a bit of an ascendancy. They had a lead at quarter time. We're in this game. We're winning out of the centre. Let's go again with our best players in the centre rather than taking him off and
they kicked 3 goals, Adelaide, out of centre bounce, which is huge. I would agree with you. I think if you've got momentum, which you haven't had a lot of this year, stick with it. And Cripps obviously being a key pillar in that midfield.
Yep.
That's where the game was won and lost, really. And Voss, in his post-match interview, just said, look, it's not reliant on one player, which I totally agree with. The whole midfield needs to do it. But if you've got a player that can keep you the momentum, keep him on the ground. We're in the business of winning here.
I think if you're an Adelaide player, you looked at the centre square and you thought, you beauty, Cripps is not here.
And if you're an Adelaide supporter, I think you look at that performance and say, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Because they won. They don't look the team they looked last year. They just feel slower to me. Now, I know we're hearing about a couple of big-name draftees, big-name players who might be bringing in at the end of the year, but they need to.
Yeah, they do need some speed. But, I mean, Isaac Rankin's a big X-factor that could actually improve a lot, and Riley Thilthorpe's been okay without being fantastic, and he could be a lot better. So I wouldn't be too worried. The Pies I'd be more worried about. Jake Niall wrote about trying to, have a look at the list, given that Nick Dacos is obviously their trump card, but there's not many players his age coming through, although Anderson was good. Your thoughts on the Pies and Fremantle?
Fremantle were lucky to win.
Yeah.
And again, it took a couple of valiant, really brave individual performances, including from the captain again, who is just having some sort of year. And Freo, I think when we get to the pointy end of the season, they're good enough to be top 4.
They've got everything, but I think they're just they're good enough to be top 4.
And they shouldn't have been in the position they were in on Friday night. Collingwood, you just look at their list management, and I think you're right. I think that they've got, in my view, the best guy going around. I mean, you could argue Bontempelli, you can argue a few other players, but he's just such a champion, Nick Dacos. And he will single-handedly get them over the line this year in games they otherwise wouldn't win. But you do wonder about, apparently, although Graham Wright denies it, players had had enough of Jack Ginnivan. Players clearly hadn't had enough of Brodie Myercheck, and I'm not saying he alone would have won them games this year, but it just seems like they have allowed good players to leave.
I think the big one's Houston, which we spoke about last year. Getting him in and not taking a pick in that really strong draft is the one that most Collingwood supporters are a bit...
So who is it? Is it the coach or the list manager, or are they aligned in the players not picks?
It's a coach list manager.
Yeah, they're completely aligned.
Yeah, they're aligned, and that's the problem that Collingwood supporters have with their decision-making on that particular issue. I mean, Ginnivan would not be going as well as he's going now if he'd stayed at Collingwood.
No. Yeah, he needed a fresh start.
Yeah, and he's got fit enough, and Mitchell's coached him really well, and he's also had Luke Bruce and Jack Gunston to help him, and Watson and those guys. I think that's been a good move.
Yeah, it's been a great move, but aren't there people... Craig McRae's a premiership coach. Couldn't he have...
Yeah, but if it's
couldn't Jack Ginnivan have grown up anyway?
Yeah, but if it's not
sure
working, it's not working.
Yeah. If you've breached trust, or if you've lost trust of your teammates, it's harder.
Yeah.
Culturally as well, I don't know what was happening at the time, but yeah, it is hard to get back, and sometimes the best way to do that is cut ties.
But he went to Hawthorn and he put on social media, see you in 2 weeks, before a crucial final that they ended up losing by a kick.
Yeah.
He, did the failed turn up to the, to the clinic, which portrayed the club in a bad light. I mean, it wasn't like he hasn't stuffed up at Hawthorn as well.
Oh, no, he has, but he's been... you're less in the spotlight at Hawthorn as well.
Do you think
to
that's
a certain
part
extent?
Of it?
Yeah, and you got Watson, who's also a bit of. There's a lot more characters at Hawthorn to take away attention.
Just circling back to Collingwood for 1 second, I thought it was quite telling how desperate they were to have their key players out there when they made the mistake with Darcy Moore sending him back out there with that hamstring strain, and then also I thought it was rather aggressive to send Nick Dacos up on that Thursday night trip with that corky. And it just shows how vital they feel those two players are to their side, and how much maybe they don't trust the rest of their team without those two in the side. So I just thought that was inadvertently a message that they sent about how desperate they are at the moment.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, we can't go through this first section without mentioning Essendon.
Bombers.
That was exciting. They once they kind of realised they were going to win, they went away with it and had a bit of joy in their lives for once.
So the previous week against the Bulldogs, and you know, this has been spoken about, there was such a promising performance.
It was.
And Brad Scott said that, and we all sort of rolled our eyes a bit. Well, no, we didn't roll our eyes because I live with an Essendon supporter, and he was really optimistic after that performance against the Bulldogs. But what I sensed off-field, and you do run into a lot of people that gather around, including very senior people at footy clubs, was the reinforcement to me of how well they think Brad Scott is coaching and how well he has coached this year. And this just was said to me again and again, because we haven't heard from Andrew Welsh. We haven't heard from Tim Roberts. And I've been very critical of that we only hear from Scott and McGrath, and it's just been unfair on them to carry that load. But both those older gentlemen or more senior gentlemen at the footy club, off-field more senior, were just adamant that he's been doing a sensational job, and they keep telling him that. So I'm glad that they got the result. I thought Melbourne were pretty ordinary, though.
Melbourne were ordinary, but I spoke to a few people from clubs yesterday, and they were like, Melbourne was the team that was kind of good for Essendon to beat because it would have created hell for any other team to lose to Essendon, whereas Stephen King's still in his honeymoon phase a little bit.
I guess so, but that was a really disappointing performance from the D's. A few things stood out. Peter Wright in the ruck for the second week in a row. I mean, you're talking about ruckman, but he's hardly your quintessential ruckman, but that move has worked so well.
Yeah, it has, and he's made a couple of positional switches, Scott, over the last couple of weeks, which I've really liked. Obviously, Wright in the ruck, he was not being used very well in the forward line, maybe because they weren't getting enough ball down there, but now Wright can have a bit of control around that in the centre of the ground. McGrath mostly played on Pickett yesterday. We know that Pickett's a pretty good player, but McGrath's been very, very handy down there at half back, and then Durham played a little bit more in attack, and I thought Langford in defence was a different look as well. So I think over the last couple of weeks, Scott's been trialling that, and maybe yesterday it kind of clicked, which you love to see. They were plus 28 in contested possession, plus 99 in uncontested possession. So the inside to outside work was brilliant. Yeah. And yes, I don't know how much, like obviously great for Essendon to get that performance in, but wow, I was disappointed. I'm in the D's because you can't continue to rock up in your casual gear and have these slow starts. I'm sorry. Like, I love the casual gear, but if you turn up, they've had, I've looked at the last 3 games, they've had shocking starts. They've won 2 of them.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise Dennis Pagan had walked into the building.
But seriously, this is a team, Essendon have been struggling, and to get smashed in contested possession by 28, that is effort and intent from the first bounce that you don't have. And they were unable to change it throughout the course of the game, and I just thought it was a real dip in what I feel like they've been playing some really exciting footy.
Yeah, Polo-led recovery for Libby Birch.
You have to be won't like that. They're very happy.
No, I said I like the casual gear. I
hate the casual gear.
No, I do like casual gear, but you have to back it up with what you do on the field in the first quarter.
Well, not in casual gear. With Zach Merritt, who he's come back, hasn't he? I mean, he's after that miserable game a couple of weeks ago where he was well held. Brilliant second half last week. Yep. Played really well again on the weekend, and you know, it sort of takes the pressure off a bit, I think.
I think what we've noticed, and hence the optimism of Essendon supporters, their senior players have dug in since half-time last week. And they've actually had a dip. Peter Wright's his intensity has been so much stronger in that 6 quarters than it was previously.
Why do you hate the casual gear, Peter, out of interest?
I can't use the word, but they do look like wankers, basically.
You've just used it, I think.
Anyway, I couldn't think of a better word.
You sound like a fuddy-duddy.
Yeah, I do. Righto, we'll come back with...
on that note?
Yes, the rest of Gather Round shortly.
We're online all the time. Just search Age Real Footy on Facebook or Twitter.
Butterick minding Watson, who pounces, goes and gets him. Part of the season, gave it to Moore. High kick. Amazing. Fantastic team goal. The Wizard. with the handoff.
And he's into him, the Wizard. That is class crumbing.
Welcome back, and that was the Wizard, Nick Watson, who was devastating in that third quarter or second quarter against the Bulldogs. What do you make of that game? Was it more about Hawthorn being ominous or the Bulldogs struggling without a ruck and some of their key players?
Well, it was always, there's a view that Tim English in one sense is their most important player. And as Libby's just pointed out to me in a bit of an off-field chat, there's got some pretty tough games coming up and they're not going to have Tim English. So I think the point I'd make about Hawthorn is they just seem to, for their deficiencies, they just seem to, at the moment anyway, they're covering for them so much better than other clubs are with their injury issues.
Yeah, 100%. I think your piece on Ginnivan was terrific. I think he's having a huge influence as a wingman almost that can slide back in defence and come forward and influence in offence. I think he's playing the best footy he's played in his career. But their half-backs, I think, are doing amazing job. Impey, Amon, Ambrosio, Hardwick, all in the top 10 disposal getters on the weekend.
Right.
A lot of drive off that half-back. But we spoke about off-air the rucks, Reeves, Meek. They're just doing incredible things in that ruck. And the duality of those two around the ground, but then also in centre clearance is giving the likes of Jai Newcomb, I think he had 12 clearances on the weekend, but they're getting them first use. And I think that that's been really important. And also I love the way that Sam Mitchell gets the creativeness out of his players and not putting up with bad performance or bad minutes either. Came out in the third term and said that was pathetic. You know, I love that. That's the standards of a good team.
Michael Gleeson wrote a great piece today about Ned Reeves being, given that Hawthorn's midfield is the one question mark that we've all had, and obviously they missed out on Zach Merritt, but Ned Reeves has been reborn under the ruck rules and now they've got a weapon.
Yeah, well, he's the midfielder, midfield weapon nobody really saw coming. So back to the Bulldogs, what would you do about Sam Darcy? I mean, there's a view that he's too good to be playing in the ruck and you wouldn't risk him. You wouldn't risk his young body. Yeah,
well, you're playing Geelong, Sydney and Freo. You got smashed at the stoppage clearances by 34-16. Hit outs to advantage 21-3, which is huge. I don't know. Do you want to lose the next 3 games? Like,
definitely
playing.
I
reckon you got to play him. They've got Rob Emmett, who was the debutant on the night, and Croft.
Lewis
and
Emmett.
Lewis Emmett. Yeah, Lewis Emmett. Yeah.
Yep.
And they just did nothing. They did nothing. So if you've got nothing there, then I think you have to bring Darcy in. I know that he's the Mercedes that you don't want to bring out of, the key spot, but if you've got to have a crack at these next 3 games. And the Bulldogs game style is all around clearances. That's where they won all their matches.
They've had their starting, Liberatore wasn't playing, Ed Richards was under a cloud, so they only really had Bont of their best midfield combination. But I think you absolutely put Sam Darcy in the ruck. Depending on him, I mean, there's a sense that obviously he came out of that State of Origin game a little bit beaten up and had a few back issues. So if he's okay, I think that you play him in the ruck. Salmon used to play in the ruck.
So at the same age, I guess he did. I guess it was a different time. Well, they used to bounce the ball in Paul Salmon's day. I mean, how different is it now with the throw up? I mean, it's completely changed.
Yeah.
It's so different. Yeah, you can see the athletic rucks are getting first use on the tap and it just breaks the stoppage open or breaks the centre clearance open. I think, a good example of it is the GWS ruck in Briggs who can't jump. No. And, you can see the difference between how GWS are going at the moment and how other teams that have got, good athletic rucks.
I'm not sure if you saw the Gold Coast Sydney game, but Mac Andrew in the second half was fantastic to watch.
That's another one. Wits, probably not super athletic, but Mac Andrews, the combination of those two, really good. Yeah. And you look at the Lions, Draper, Fort, Allen, Freo, Darcy, Jackson, Cox. You need to have the physical ruck and then also this athletic ruck. And I think that's a combination we're seeing in the good teams.
Yeah. Sorry, Caro, you
go. Can I just mention the Gold Coast quickly?
Yeah.
So they came into the year as a premiership favourite and they've just lost 2 in a row. And they're not. They're clearly not performing away from home, and they've had to play a lot away from home. Are you worried about them, Peter?
Yeah, away from home, absolutely. I texted someone to that effect because I tipped them on the weekend. So never again away from home. Well, obviously the one qualifier is that Christian Petrarca and Bailey Humphrey are not playing, so we'll get a better sense. But Matt Rowell...
Swans don't have Errol Goulden. I mean...
No, it's no excuse, but I'm just saying that's my only kind of forgive in a sense. But, their backline worries me a little bit. It just feels like it's not quite firing. Noble and Rioli aren't as effective as they were last year, and Sam Collins is just going okay. So they're definitely a watch, and I won't be tipping them for another 8 years when they're playing outside of Gold Coast.
Yeah, really.
The other question mark at the moment for the Swans is Charlie Curnow.
Yep.
He has not really set the world on fire. Let's be brutal.
Yep.
And he had some opportunities on the weekend. I mean, in the first quarter he had lots of opportunities, but that miss later in the game from about 5 metres away.
When he bellied the ball out on the full, I know. He doesn't look... He's not a hard worker. He's kind of a laconic kind of player, isn't he? He doesn't work hard enough for me.
No, but...
I still think...
But he gets a ball and yet he's missing. I mean, that's the bigger issue at the moment.
I know, but his confidence player.
You got to give players a year to settle in to a new side. You do. Yes.
Well, how many years? You've played for 3 clubs.
Yeah, and I'm saying you can have a good season, but then your greatness comes after in the season.
You couldn't say Charlie Curnow's had a good season, and at his age, they don't want to really be waiting for a year, Libby.
Is it the keys? You know, Sydney obviously going very well at the moment. In fact, they've changed their whole game style, which is looking fast and dynamic, and a lot of handball use. So maybe they don't need him kicking as many goals as we think they do. They just need him competing so that the Smalls can get to work in the game style that they're playing currently, is what I'm saying.
That's true.
The expectations of the outside world more than what Dean Cox is asking from him, is what I'm saying.
No, I don't think that. I think you're reasonable in that he can be given time. It can take time, but I think the Swans have high expectations for him, higher than what he's delivering right now.
And Marty had a pretty flaky game as well. Yep. So, that Isaac Heaney obviously,
superstar,
is some sort of player and he's having some sort of season. But yeah, I've been disappointed so far.
Yeah. And the Dogs go into a massive game on Friday night against the Cats, where it's Mark Blitzarv's 300th game. Mark Blitzarv's. He can play in the ruck. He can play everywhere. What's his best position? What sort of a player has he been?
Oh, I just think the key to our day and age in footy is how versatile can he be? How flexible can he be? And he's been the player over 300 games where Scott can just put him anywhere across the ground and he'll have an impact. But I think what makes him so special is his athletic ability, his height, but then his running capacity as well. I feel like has always been such a pivotal part to his game. The ability for him to cover the ground has been enormous. So a big congratulations. It's a huge achievement.
He doesn't need many possessions to have a huge impact because his defensive running's so strong that it just buggers up the opposition, basically.
He's an extraordinary player, and he's such a great story. 300. I would not have picked Mark Blitzarv's when he first started playing would be a 300 gamer. So it's testament to that footy club and the way they've handled him and what he's done himself. Why are there 2 games on Friday night almost at the same time? And 2 games of the round.
It's a good question. No one really knows the answer, but I assume that they just want to have a Sydney Friday night game and they didn't want to squeeze out a game here. I'm not sure. Do you know the answer?
Well, I should have asked the question over the weekend. First of all, it's great that there are 9 games around back again.
Absolutely.
And it's great that there's been a concession to a degree from the AFL that next year, if there is an opening round, I mean, for a start, just call it round 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Call it round 1, please. It hasn't worked the way gather rounds worked. Everyone says gather round. No one says opening round. They all say round 0.
Well, they all don't know what they're saying.
It's never been sold. It hasn't. Yeah. It's worked in some senses. I mean, it has been. They've got good crowds to the games that they have fixtured, but unfortunately they haven't promoted them properly and it hasn't worked.
And this game's the only game in Sydney this month.
This month?
Yep.
For the month of, over the next month, you
April. Mean? This month of April, there is 1 game in Sydney. after opening round.
Yeah, that's poor.
And there's
isn't it?
one game on the Gold Coast this
I
month.
just think it drives me insane, and it would drive the players insane to play one game or 2 games and then have an 18-day break. There's just no momentum in the fixture at the moment with opening round. So I'm glad we're back to 9 games.
You probably need to put someone really, really senior at head office, like Tom Harley, I guess, who's just come in, and just make them in charge of the fixture. I know that there are good people like Matthew Chun, and there's a list of people who work on
Josh
the fixture.
Bowler. Yep.
But really, there were too many permutations and it hasn't worked. I don't understand about this weekend. I mean, I would be very happy on Friday night to sit down and watch GWS versus the Sydney Swans. I reckon that's a great fixture.
Well, it was until the Giants lost Cornelio and Cadman.
Well, and Cadman really looked good, didn't he, in his first game? In his game back.
Speaking of frustrations, there's often been frustrations about the AFLW fixture. Libby?
Speaking of double headers.
Exactly, and speaking of double headers.
Don't call them curtain raisers.
Now
I'm okay with the curtain raise. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
You're an expert in AFLW. What do you think of the planned double headers? And we touched on international rules. What do you think?
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that we're going to go double headers. I think the girls or the whole of the AFLW has been asking for it for a long time. And the reason why I love it so much is because I think it brings, obviously we're going to be playing it at the stadiums, which is very cool and not an opportunity we get often. And I think it brings 2 clubs together, or as in 2 fan bases of the clubs together, and an ability for fans that maybe haven't been in touch with AFLW since the first season to cross paths with it again and see what the game is like. Because if you think the men's games got faster, the W games definitely got faster because of the rules as well, and just how, we're in our 11th season. So I think it's really exciting for the game, and I can't wait for it. Hopefully we're in one of the double headers, but I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, you might be. Speaking of, this is off the agenda, but the arc. What do you think about this arc? I thought about the rules. I don't know, we're going off the radar here, but the use of the arc was ridiculous.
Well, with the last touch,
yeah,
etc. Well, I mean, that I didn't really occur to me, and I was at the game, the Carlton Adelaide game, where I think Lee Matthews in the commentary absolutely smashed
as he should have
delays. And then Lee on 3AW with me on Saturday said, well, what they really should bring in are free kick decisions in front of goal.
Yep.
Because they're the most crucial. And I said, well, yeah, but Lee, if you do that, I mean, a free kick decision in the centre of the ground can be equally crucial depending on the, maybe not as immediate. I thought we were making the game quicker.
Yeah, and they're creeping. They've got to actually put some sort of limits on what they do around it, because, Xavier Dersma didn't get a free kick when Essendon were, he dropped the ball clearly. I mean, where do you stop and start? You have to put some rules on it.
And was it Michael Gleeson who wrote about there were 3 different people standing at the boundary line refusing to touch the ball?
Yeah, exactly right.
Too scared to go near it. I mean, that's another unintended,
you don't want that, do you?
Unintended consequence. Well, one more about AFLW. Are you happy with the structural changes at head office?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's really good to have Laura Kane heading that up. And I just think we've got more key people at the AFL working on our game, which is, I think, exactly what we need. And having Laura Kane, obviously, huge.
Can I ask you one more question? Showcase game, if there is one, and you were in charge and they said you pick him, what would you do? Would you have Victoria, South Australia, Australia versus
I think
Ireland?
It depends when you play it, because I think Carrie brought up a really good point, is if you miss gather round, like you would have had SA, I think that's a good idea, SA versus Victoria or the rest of Australia. So, yeah, I think they're leaning towards the Irish versus Australia, but I probably would have liked a big Vic game. I reckon that would be cool.
Is that because you're more of a chance to get a game? Or?
Wowza.
Gee.
Wowza.
Well, it's a tough crowd here. We've got to be serious.
Speaking of your performances, and I'm talking about your footy club, are the new draft rules going to eventually mean you're going to stop winning premierships?
I would say so. Yeah. But I think that's the key to growing AFLW, isn't it? It's we've got a few teams that probably need a little bit more help at the moment, and with Tassie coming in soon as well, that's going to expand things. And we know the talent pool is important, and we need to make sure that we, spread that across the competition so we get good eyes on our game and all the games are quality. So yes, it affects teams like us who are playing some good footy at the moment, but it's for the good of the game, and I'm all for it.
Isn't it good to be talking about AFLW in April? We'll come back soon with quick questions.
Get access to every episode as it drops. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Curnow will hit the pack late. Papley from miles out. It bounces Papley. Oh, it straightens Papley. He's away again. He's got three. He's a magician, a genius, a wizard. Call him what you want. The button fire's been unstoppable this afternoon.
Welcome back. Tom Papley, 200 games a couple of weeks ago. Great player to watch. Now, Caro, have the AFL done enough to foster the game in Sydney? Worried about participation rates and so on?
Well, there's a lot bigger issues than that, but that is the big one that was highlighted over the last week. Jared Healy picked it up again. I think it's been spoken about on the midweek tackle a couple of weeks ago, these woeful numbers. On the positive side, in the last 2 years, the AFL have appointed a really strong head of AFL New South Wales in Andrew Verasdi,
absolutely,
who has told the AFL repeatedly that they are counting the wrong numbers.
Right.
And he has given the real story. At the moment, the Commission is looking at ways. He's put to them a review and a request for extra funds and extra people and a new look at how to build the numbers. But I think you need to look at the whole New South Wales question.
Absolutely.
How to develop the game in Greater Western Sydney. GWS have got to stop talking about their membership when clearly people aren't turning up to the games. Wherever you play the games in opening round, when are you going to spend money on it? Because this year the budget was down. There was not, and we were both up there.
I saw one picture of Isaac Heaney above a bar somewhere.
And there were no TV commercials.
No.
I mean, when you go all the way back to I'd like to see that campaigns. Those a brilliant campaign released on the day of the season launch. We should be seeing commercials on TV in Sydney or on social media, wherever people digest their media now, involving Toby Green and Isaac Heaney and whoever. Because at the moment, that why have all these games and stuff up the rest of the competition as supporters think they've done without even promoting the code in Sydney itself?
Couldn't agree more. And I spoke to a lot of people who actually do a great job in Western Sydney running clubs, and they're desperate because the ecosystem is dying since COVID. It's been really difficult merging clubs and so on, and they don't see enough players. They don't have contact with enough players, even though the Giants players do as well as they can, but they just don't feel like they're connected to the AFL.
So you've also got a CEO, Dave Matthews, who's been under the pump, who, a few weeks ago I would have said was in danger of losing his job because, I don't think Richard Goyder was a huge fan. I don't think Gillan McLaughlin helped Dave Matthews because he used to take it up to them all the time.
Yep.
But is it GWS's role alone to fix the numbers in in Greater Western Sydney or Western Sydney? He's built a footy club that, has played finals most years. I have some sympathy for him.
Absolutely. Righto, we've got Phil from Wollongong, funnily enough. Why have umpires lost the ability to judge 15 metres Libby?
Well, it is tough. My brother's an umpire. I'll disclose that. He's a field umpire.
Yep.
And
can he tell 15 metres?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
But, it's an art, isn't it? It's just like the way I explain it when I'm on air is the umpires are doing the exact same thing the footballers are doing in terms of marking a footy. It's a skill, marking the 15 metres. And sometimes you get your skills wrong, and they're trying to get the 15 metres exactly right. But yes, I will say there's a few short 15-metre kicks.
Absolutely.
But in saying that, though, there's a few drop marks from players. There's a few missed goals. And people don't see it like that, but I see it like that because I live with someone who is a field umpire, and it is coached like that. It is coached as a skill. So that's, I guess, the behind the scenes behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but they're trying to keep the game moving. It must be the scariest thing as a footballer to hear is not 15 when you're about to mark the ball.
Particularly in D50.
Yeah, panic. But I don't mind the fact that they're trying to regulate it because, well, even if they get a few wrong, at least they're trying to be red hot.
Yeah, and I think it prompts the player with the footy to also have a backup option as well, and that's potentially where you're seeing a team like Sydney get the quick kick, whether it is 10, 15 metres, but then getting the hands off that as well, I think.
And we've got a question, this will be dear to your heart, Caro, from Chris from Paran. When is Richmond's next win coming?
Well, they've got Dreamtime coming up, looking less optimistic than it did probably a week ago. And obviously they've got North. I don't think they'll have a hope against North.
No, they've got West Coast.
And West Coast, who I don't think...
They've lost 10 in a row now.
Yeah, and they've I mean, this has been written about, but they've got so many injuries.
I know.
And I know that's not an excuse, but they've got a worse injury list than any other team. And more worryingly for me is not Nankervis and Lynch, but, Houghton.
Yep.
And the Armstrong and the
Smiley.
Yep, because they're the players who they're the players who the club needs to get games into. Yep. And I'm hearing different versions of, it's been suggested to me that some of the players are talking about the Punt Road surface.
Right.
And is it a bit soft? And maybe that could be an issue. Now,
it might be the Punt Road surface. It's a bit soft.
No.
Might be the players talking about the Punt Road surface.
Well, and clearly they're not all soft tissue injuries, but this has been a crisis now at the club for the last season. It was a problem as well.
Yeah. There's been a lot of ACLs in some of their younger kids as well, which is really costly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
something you can't avoid, although they do a fair bit of screening now on the draftees about whether you've got an ACL risk. But, they've had a few unlucky ones as well, Caro, just with that sort of thing.
That's true, but when you talk to the experts, and then they say that 4 wins last year,
yep.
I think, that they would not do as well this year as those 4 wins. And look, there's no point looking back. And yes, they are obviously playing with house money to a degree because it was only 2020 that they won their last flag.
6 quickly becomes 16.
I know.
But Sam Grill and Sam Lawler look like really exciting players. Jonty Fall, Liam Fawcett, they've got some players there.
Oh, yeah, and there were some moments
Trainer.
in the third quarter. And I did notice at halftime they all looked like they were having a really great time.
Which is good.
Laughing and joking.
But that's good, though, I think. I think that's good.
Yeah,
that means that there is ability for the coach to bring a little bit of fun
to the
game.
And the coach looked upbeat,
yes.
With some late goals, even though they were only about 40 points down. So
yep.
I think the mindset's okay, but the injuries are a worry, and I don't know where their next win is coming from to answer that question.
No, but does it become and we won't drag on too long, but when does it become something that Richmond supporters get impatient about?
I think this year, I think there's still the honeymoon for Adamuse. Next year, you want to see some improvement.
Righto, so just a last question we're going to each of you. Libby and Caroline, what's on your radar for this week?
My radar is the Bulldogs. I want to see what they do with that decision that we spoke about today in terms of their ruck. How are they going to fix it? 3 big games coming up. They could be 0-3 from these 3 games without Tim English. So I'm not expecting him to be back in less than 3 weeks. So I want to see what Beveridge gets up to this week in terms of that ruck.
Interesting, Caro.
Well, when traditional rivals play, you never quite know what's going to happen. And Collingwood, Carlton, this could go either way. The Blues have shown signs, and Collingwood are looking pretty ordinary at the moment.
Yep.
So I'm really looking forward to Collingwood, Carlton. I know that might sound a bit boring.
No, I agree. I was going to say the same thing because I realised that Carlton were playing Collingwood on Thursday night, and I've probably given enough ammunition to Carlton supporters to hit back hard if they defeat, and I'm sure a lot of Collingwood supporters have.
Tickets on yourself, haven't you?
No. No, not at all. But it's a massive game, isn't it? If Collingwood get beaten, then the real questions start to be asked about their direction this year.
Absolutely.
Righto, that's all we have time for. Thanks, Caroline and Libby, for joining us. Thanks also to Channel 7 and Fox Footy for the audio we used in this episode. For all the latest footy news and analysis, go to theage.com.au, and to get in touch with us, email realfootypod@theage.com.au. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our podcasts. You can catch myself and Danny Russell Thursday when we preview the coming round of AFL matches and talk footy tipping. This podcast will be back next Monday. See you then.